have with us Mr. Didar Singh, Secretary General of FICCI. Sir, your first take on the budget.
My first take on the budget is Achhe Din, Acha Budget.
Which is the most prominent highlight of the budget that you think can actually bring about Achhe Din?
You see, as an industry body looking at the environment that the country needs to get growth into the whole system and look at in employment, which is the single largest issue. I think what signaling this budget has done is that it's given a signal of continuity and stability. This is what is extremely important for the investor, be a foreign investor or be a domestic investor. Once you get stability in a system, that is when the private entrepreneur is willing to take a risk, because the market is already there. So I think Mr. Jaitley has given a very mature budget where he has looked at improving the environment under which investment must take place in the country, from addressing the retrospective tax issue, which was number one on our agenda, which we gave to the government, addressing issues of inverted duty structure, which is something we'd given a whole report to government on from FICCI, the whole issue of taxation and a stable taxation regime, particularly addressing dispute resolution, because some 4 lakh crores is stuck in disputes in the system, and looking at the whole infrastructure area, where again you have seen a lot of problems in terms of implementation, which of course the earlier government had also attempted to address, but I believe much more now needs to be done. And with this signaling and saying that I will have a higher authority look at disputes even in the infrastructure sector, and will be able to also look at, it was a very important signal given, look at even tweaking the contracting situation on PPP. PPP is the right choice to go for, but if disputes arise out of it, they have to be addressed. You can't be ignored. You can't keep saying, okay, only I add this very formula and I will not change it. So all this tweaking is a signal to the market that we are a mature economy. There are several issues before us, but we'll address them as we go along. And we'll address them while we are maintaining the financial prudence required in maintaining the fiscal deficit. So this is this tremendous balance. So the second most important thing I would say, it's a balanced budget. It's a balance not just in terms of the resources and the ability to do your various activities that you wish to. It is also mature in that it is both continuous and it is stability. No major changes in tax have been brought in, which could have, and yet you create an environment by which, whether from the banking sector, you're talking in terms of addressing some of the issues of capitalization of banks by allowing retail investors into a major step, excellent step. Looking at environment, looking in terms of sanitation. You have said that there must be sanitation available for all Indians by 2019. It's a very tall order. It's not an easy thing, and if that kind of a tall order can be implemented, imagine the business and growth and improvement in health that happens because of it. So all in all, it is addressing different sections of society and addressing the economy as a whole to create an environment in which the ease of doing business can and should improve better, and you will see a response from manufacturing, from business, where that will lead to job creation.
Sir, inflation troubled the UPA government for close to 7 years. Do you think Mr. Jaitley has done enough to contain inflation, whatever he could have in terms of making announcements in the budget?
You see, inflation in our opinion is not a figure that comes at the end of what a price is. There is a whole stream of activities behind that inflation, the most important of them being agriculture productivity. Unless agriculture productivity improves, and then the second part, food processing and supply chains, unless you can have cold chains, supply chains, backward linkages, change the whole question of movement infrastructure by which produce is moved into the markets, all of that have been addressed in separate ways. All of them, if they come together and growth revives in the country, you will be able to handle inflation much better. You're absolutely right. Inflation has to be handled. Without inflation being handled, how will interest rates ever come down, and how will therefore further investment take place? So these are all linked activities, but I believe in addressing the core of it, which is creating a better climate in which implementation can happen. The government is giving a signal that it will be mature in handling the issues before the economy.
So is there a difference between the UPA style of budget and the NDA style of budget?
See, there are always differences in every finance minister. There's always differences in every government. I believe that difference is reflected in what the result comes out as. And if we see a better implementation of the activities that have happened, I will say that is the really biggest difference that would come about in the new strong government that we have with us in India now.
So the minister talked about certain transparency issues in the financial sector, and he has made certain announcements as well in the same sector. What is your take on that?
I think he's provided for some very major activities there, particularly this question of long-term finance and banking capitalization I just mentioned to you. If you can handle long-term financing, that is the single biggest issue for not just private sector, for the economy. You cannot get the kind of infrastructure rollout that is required, and we are talking about 1 billion. Where is it going to come? Or 2 billion, which is estimated. So you have to cater for this long-term finance, and he's said out there that he will create special rules and regulations by which banks, if they take long-term lending for the infrastructure sector, all your CRR and other activities limitations will not apply. So all this is an extremely good signal. He talked about NABARD, which was addressing the agriculture sector. He's talked of special financing available for startups, for SME sector. All of them have been addressed, but basically you see each of them is one note on a larger scale. It's only if all those notes are played together and you get a good response in terms of the orchestra that you're trying to do, then we will actually see the Achhe Din that the whole country is waiting for.
The previous government was actually involved in a lot of corporate litigation with the private sector. This government has made some announcements. Do you think these kind of announcements can actually help curtail the corporate litigation that the government is entering into with the private sector?
Absolutely. As we just mentioned, the whole retro tax business, which was a very negative signal that has been done, and he's addressed it head on. That was the first thing he said, and that is the first thing FICCI said when we put out our recommendations to the government. And FICCI took out a report which has been shared with government on dispute resolution in the whole taxation world. So not only do we need stability in the taxation system, we need a better tax administration. And in that administration, if these tremendous amount of disputes can get handled, you will immediately see a complete a recapitalization of various industries and businesses if they get over this. And secondly, if you change this whole sort of almost like a norm which has become that appeal upon appeal by government goes on right up till the Supreme Court, even on places where they're losing. So it's not worth it if this begins to be addressed, and he has addressed it. He says that I will look at this. There will be a mechanism under which it will happen, particularly in terms of new claims being made. He's talked in terms of transfer pricing and how that will be handled. So overall, yes, you're absolutely right. I do believe that the environment of tax disputes should improve in the country.